one of the big mistakes that most people are making in online education, whether it's membership sites or online courses or certifications, and it's called the Firehose Effect. It's Michael Weiss, the founder of Client Engagement Academy, and welcome. We are covering one of the big mistakes that most people are making in online education, whether it's membership sites or online courses or certifications, and it's called the Firehose Effect. Now, what is a Firehose Effect? It seems weird. It's the ability to have a fire hose at your mouth, they turn it on, and what happens? You actually drown in water. You get overwhelmed. A fire hose is pretty powerful, right? So that fire hose effect is something that we do not want to do for obvious reasons. It's overwhelming. Now, how does a fire hose effect really apply to online education? The answer to that is overwhelm. Now, what creates overwhelm is really the next logical question. As a learner coming into a platform, what creates overwhelm? That is what we wanted to address today. So, welcome, and this is the fire hose effect. So, let's pretend and let's put ourselves in the shoes of a learner, which I often do. And we buy a course, and it's 15 modules or lessons in the course. We buy it, we get the login and password, we come in, and boom, all 15 lessons are available to us. And there's no gate 1, 2, 3. They're all available. Now, some would argue that that's acceptable because if someone buys a course, just give them everything they have. They're adults, and they will be able to pick and choose what they want. In theory, that's okay. In reality, that's a huge mistake. That creates overwhelm, and that is the fire hose effect because most people will poke around, they'll experience some of it, and get none of it. And that's what we want to avoid. Now, we know that online, the graduation rates or the engagement rates on average are 3 to 12% in a wide spectrum of coursework. And in membership sites, on average globally, people only pay for 3.8 months and then they're out. That's churn. So one of the big factors is this fire hose effect because people get overwhelmed and they just stop. So that's one example, and that's really on the course side. Let's take another example in the membership site. So you're going to pay $100 a month. Every month you're going to come in. There's going to be new content. That's what a membership site is. So what happens with the fire hose effect is you come in and there's a dearth of information. It's all over the place. It's not organized. And as a learner, putting myself in the shoes of a learner, I log in. I don't know where to go or what to do. I don't know how to get a small win. I don't know how to create an outcome. And that is a fire hose effect because that's overwhelmed. So now that we can have two examples to go by, and there's many other examples of how this plays out, but I just gave you two, let's look at how to solve that. So you can take the information today and put it into action and create better outcomes for your students. So one, let's go back to the course. Now, let me just sidetrack for a second and tell a little story. If you are ill and you go to the doctor, he might say, okay, we can solve that with penicillin. And he might say, take these for 10 days. Those 10 days, one a day, that's the prescription. So we've all done this. We've gone home. After 5 days, we're feeling great. We stop taking the prescription. What happens? 7, 8 days later, we're not feeling well again. We go back to the doctor. He doesn't even have to ask. He says, I bet you stopped at day 5 or 6, didn't you? And of course, we say yes. He's like, you didn't follow the prescription. It's 10 days because that's what it takes to get a result. So how does that translate into our course? Well, your responsibility is to understand your content, and we're not going to get into micro commitments today, but even before understanding your existing content, there's a whole philosophy of how to create content today to meet today's learners. But whatever it is, you've got your content. It's your responsibility to create the learner pathway, the prescription of what is the optimal amount of time for them to get through, say, these 10 modules. Now, for simplicity's sake, let's say it's 10 modules and it's 10 weeks. One module. You want them to work on one module for each week. They go in, they take the video, they have some exercises, they actually add some commentary in. So 1 week, 10 weeks, one a week. Now, that creates what we call a linear pathway, and that's the baseline. So let's take a stop for a second and let's compare just now the one way we described, which is the overwhelm. Someone comes in, they get access to everything, and there's no particular order. They can poke around whatever they want. And let's compare that to now, this way. Now, this way is, okay, a little bit better because they come in and they are now access to one, a week later, 2, 3. So this is the narrow pathway. It's the learner pathway. And we know that most people by nature need to be and want to be led. So we're leading them. So on the surface, apples to apples comparison, this way is a winner and it's much better. However, there's a big flaw in stopping here. And that flaw is the fact that while most people do want to be led and they're fine following the prescription, there's a wide and big sort of congregation of people that are type A like me that do not want to be tortured by the prescription. That's why we stopped taking the penicillin, because we're done with it, right? So when I come into a course and they don't tell me up front that they're going to torture me for 10 weeks and I buy it, my expectation is I can come in and get results. So I come in, I take the first lesson, and now tick tock, I need to wait another week. I might wait another week for the second lesson just to check it out. But there's absolutely no way that I continue to wait week after week, this thing being dripped out to me. It's not my style and my personality. So I might refund, charge back, or just never show back up again. And that's what happens to mostly about a third of the population that comes into our course, the type A's. So how do we solve that problem? We need both to have a prescription and a narrow pathway and the ability to let them come in and digest it as quickly as they can and go through at their own pace. Now, here's the key. Some people said, okay, I'll do what Mike just said and give them the opportunity to come into a lesson. As long as they open it, they can go to the next one, second, third, fourth. So we have now a middle ground that's a little better. However, we haven't really created the pathway that's going to make sure that people are learning and then they will do, which is ultimately the key, because there's no comprehension in that model. So what we do is we have them come in, they take the course, they do their exercises, and they must take a quiz. When they pass that quiz, we know that they comprehended, and then they can open up the next. So if somebody wants to do 10 in 1 or 2 days, as long as they're comprehending, passing the quizzes, they can. That assures us that they are engaged and comprehending for the best shot of learning and doing. So that solves the problem of the Firehose Effect on the course analogy. Now, let's move into the monthly membership. How do we solve that overwhelm when I come in and there's so much content? That's really the key, right? So if you remember, we came in and there's just a dearth of information. We don't know where to go. So always the focus should be on everything that we do online is what is the outcome. So right now, you're spending a few minutes with me. So I wouldn't dare turn the camera on unless I knew what my outcome was. My outcome today is for you to understand the difference between the Firehose Effect and leading people in the client pathway. And then the outcome is to take this, learn it, and implement something and do it. So if you're selling monthly continuity, month, how do you focus on what is the outcome on a per month basis? Because that's the time frame that you have asked them to make a commitment to keep reinvesting in you, right? At the end of every month, they will decide, does it make sense for me to pay my $50 or $100 a month? And the answer to that question, if it makes sense, is whether or not I am getting value. I am learning there is anything in that monthly engagement that's going to help produce a better life. That's the big question mark. But nobody looks at that because no one puts themselves in the shoes of the learner. So let's now take more advanced strategy of a monthly continuity program that's built the right way. And so now I come in, I paid my initial dues, and what happens as soon as I come in? There is a Get Started page that says, welcome to our monthly membership. Here's how we want to set you up for success. You will see that these 4 modules are setting up the framework of everything that we do. Now, of course, there's a lot more that you get on a month-to-month basis. But first, we want you to develop a framework, a basis, and this is how you get it. Next, in the next week, we're going to provide you with additional extra training. As long as you keep consuming, you'll get more. But we've put it in a way that allows you to digest it and not get overwhelmed. Now, that is going to produce superior results. However, let's address maybe 10% of the population that are going to feel ripped off because they came in and they're only getting partial experience from the very first moment. What we usually do is we invite anyone who wants to override the perfect learner pathway, just email us and we'll give you access to everything as you desire. So there's so many examples of what overwhelm looks like. And there's so many different ways to create the perfect, procured, or the effective learner pathway. I'm just trying to give you a couple examples of both sides on the coursework and the membership site to stir your thoughts about your experience, about your platform. I don't know what the capabilities of your platform are, but these thoughts should drive you in a way to figure out how do I take the overwhelm out and I create a pathway that people can follow, be led, so they're engaged, they learn, and most important, they go do. I'll see you soon.